be talking Intro to iPhone Development. I have a shell, the beginning shell of an application again, if you want that on your Mac, so you can code along as best you can. You can take it. You need XCode and the iPhone SDK installed. If you don't have those installed, you really won't be able to follow along. And I will put the code up on GitHub, link it on my code math page, which we'll get to a link to that in a minute. How many people here have done iPhone development before? Have touched it, messed with it? Okay, so not half and half. It's not too bad.
I haven't.
Well, you never count for anything, so don't worry.
Oh, come on.
There's two people here that don't count. It's you and him. And then you don't count later, so it doesn't matter.
And you heckle a guy a few times.
So, my original plan was to have somebody who actually knows what they're doing do this talk. I've only been doing iPhone development for maybe 4 or 5 months, since late June, early July. But I asked 4 different people, and every single one of them had something else to do. Whether or not what they had to do was better is, debatable. So we will be talking basics of iPhone development. We won't be going into anything overtly complex. About the most complex we'll get is something called Grand Central Dispatch, which is how you handle synchronous and asynchronous threading in iPhone and OS X. And if you haven't ever used GCD before, it's awesome. That is my UB key. Yes, I will take that now. So without further ado, let's get started. For those of you who don't know what CodeMath is, you'll find out when you go to my CodeMath page. This is where you can see all the stuff I've done, all the talks I've given, all the code I've written and put out there for the public. You'll also find a link under speaking to this talk, which will give you slides that I have here, as well as a link to speaker rate so that you can rate the talk and tell me all the wonderful things I did right and wrong. So without further ado, let's get into the actual iPhone. I only have a few slides and the rest is code. So developing iPhone requirements, the first thing you're going to need is a Macintosh computer with OS X. Be pretty. You'll also need an iOS device, especially if you're doing anything requiring OpenGL or GPU acceleration. You have to have an iOS device. The simulator will not do any graphics acceleration. So if you're going to write a cool 3D game, you got to have a device to test it on. For those who've never seen an iPhone before, that's what half of one looks like. And finally, you'll need to know Objective-C.
Really?
Objective-C is the language that is the native. It's the native iPhone language. It's the native language for OS X and iPhone. If you want to do Mono and C#, that's next month. So if you want to learn about that, come next month. You'll learn about doing iPhone apps in C#.
And learn how much better it is.
What's that?
And learn how much better it is.
If you know C#, yes, it's a whole lot better. So, with Objective-C...
Oh wait, is next month the Thursday?
It'll be Thursday.
Okay.
Things you need to know about Objective-C. First off, it's built on C. Apple NetStep basically took C and Smalltalk and smashed them together. That's where all the brackets come from in Objective-C. It's from Smalltalk. If you've ever seen Smalltalk, you'll go, oh, look, that's a lot of brackets. That's where it comes from. But you can actually use a C compiler to compile, or you can use an Objective-C compiler to compile C code, because they're basically the same thing.
Quick question.
Yes?
The first Thursday of the month is actually the first. Is that the day that you're going to meet on?
Yes.
Okay.
If it just happens to land, like this one happened to land on the first as well.
Okay.
I published the GitHub repository from your thing on Review Open Dev.
Okay, that works.
I didn't lowercase it though, but I took out the space. So you can beat me up for that.
That's fine. Go for it.
I am offended.
When you type in the product name, it creates the folder, and the product name had a space in it, so it created the folder with a space.
That's fine. So
it's built on C. You'll hear people who talk about Objective-C, you'll hear them say, oh, it's all message passing. If you're in C#, C++, Java, basically any other language on the planet, that's called calling a method. So if you want to get the count of something, like if you want to do get count in Java of a string, you would do string variable space count, and that calls basically get count. If you're going to do synthesizing of variables, you can do some dot notation. I will show you what synthesizing variables in Objective-C is when we get to the actual code. Grand Central Dispatch makes threading easy. It's so easy that everybody else should do this because it is so simple you will cry. So here's an example of Objective-C code.
Oh, my eyes.
Dear Lord.
This is actually
How
this is
dare
stuff that
you
can be
curse
broken
my
into
mother's name.
several lines of code, but in this case I've shrunk it down into a single line of code. So first off, you have your variable declaration. Simple enough. Because Objective-C is based on C, you have to allocate some memory for it. That's what this does. Then you have your method name, or in Objective-C they call it message. So message or method name. In this case, init with format. And then here are our method arguments, or the things we pass to the message. So in this case, we're creating a string. Yes, Jared. You look like you want to say something.
I'm wondering about the end quote.
Yeah, you're missing one.
Am I missing one?
I'm not sure. That's what I'm asking.
Yes, I am
You are.
missing one.
Alright.
So my bad. I didn't actually type this into Xcode and copy and paste it. I actually typed it straight into the deal. So yes, there is supposed to be a quote.
An at quote?
No, just a quote at the end of this, after the D.
That means it's a literal of a particular type
Okay.
of...
Well, all NS strings are marked as literal, so you put an at sign in front of them. At least that's every example I've seen of a
Well,
string in
I was
Objective-C.
just asking because there was at quote, and then
That's a
I
good
couldn't
point.
tell if the percentage at or the at quote was the same.
So this right here, this quote and this quote contain this hello, and then this guy is a placeholder,
Okay.
and then inside of that placeholder would be put this string right here. But since I forgot the quote,
Why is it, not to pick this apart, but what is the placeholder is percent at?
that's their. I think that's their. If I remember correctly, that's their catch-all placeholder.
Okay.
So you can actually throw anything into that placeholder, but it's primarily used for strings.
Okay.
Just like with C, you have your percent %D, your percent %I, your percent %S, your percent. You have all of those standard placeholders that you do in C and C++. They work here. This is an Objective-C specific one, I believe. I think it's for like,
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
I
it's
think all
basically
basic.
going to do the two string on it. essentially.
Yeah. So this is just a basic example of what a line of Objective-C code looks like. And as we can tell, I've already typoed. So there's my first mistake of the evening. I'm sure Josh will point out several others before the night is through. But does everybody kind of understand the basics of what this does and what it's doing? It's not overly complicated.
You want to read it to us just to make it easier?
NS string, star my string, because everything's pointer based. That star represents the pointer. NS string alloc, so we're allocating memory for an NS string. You can also do NSU integer.
Which brings back a string, right?
This
Which brings back an
NS string alloc would, yes, bring back, this actually brings back the memory location for a string.
But it has a NS string type, which you're then calling init with format?
Yes, and then
Yeah,
with
every time
format.
you see a bracket, so the way that you can kind of nest these brackets, it's like almost method chaining. So it's going to call NS string alloc, which allocates the memory, and then the instance that comes back from that, we're going to turn around and call init with format.
So it's the
Think of it like,
instance.
think about like if you had NS string alloc, parenthesis, parenthesis, dot, init with format,
Yeah.
parenthesis.
So, yeah, somebody just didn't like period. Then.
Yeah, somebody doesn't like periods. Somebody doesn't like parentheses.
They-
They like brackets. They're okay with
They tried to
brackets.
hack your
Parentheses,
Yeah, they
What?
tried to hack
They have
your way
problems.
through
It's
your
like backwards Lisp.
kind of actually, yeah. So let's do some quick resources for iPhone and Objective-C because you kind of need one to do the other. Programming Objective-C 2.0. This is the picture for the second edition. I believe Josh told me there's a third edition out now. This is pretty much the book for Objective-C. It's actually really good, really well done. And then there is the beginning iPhone 4 development. This one's actually just iPhone development. There's actually an iPhone 3 development, iPhone 4 development, and I believe they're already started the iPhone 5 development. So pick your SDK version, buy the right book, go.
Did they explain in the book why they chose the grapefruit?
not that I saw. I might have skipped over that in the forward.
Okay.
I went straight to the parts where there's code.
Yeah.
Also, we have developer.apple.com. There are actually some decent full-on documents for the Objective-C language, also for various aspects of things for iPhone development. So like there's a really good UI navigation controller document that explains UI navigation controllers extremely thoroughly. Everything you wanted to know about navigation controllers in a document. And there are others for the other various types of navigation view controllers, because there's table view controller, there's a web view controller, I think. There's map view controllers. So there's different view controllers, and they all have a corresponding document. So good place to go for just your general straight from the horse's mouth. However, if you're looking for MSDN type documentation for objects and methods, forget it. That's one thing nobody seems to be able to do better than Microsoft is documentation, because the MSDN library is by far the best. So see, y'all did do something.
Well, I mean, I don't have my XCode installed here, but I thought there was.
It gives you some basic stuff, like it'll tell you like, hey, you need to pass this stuff to this method, or this method returns this. But as far as code samples and that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
MSDN just far out blows anything out of the water. That goes for Android too.
Yeah.
And MSDN's version.
Yes,
So you
MSDN's
can-
version is also pretty decent too.
It's version documentation as well,
Which is
in
quite
one
nice.
place.
There's also the Stanford University iPhone class. This is a full-on class from Stanford University. It's all video.
Yeah.
I believe when I went to the link to get it, they actually have an iPhone or an iOS 5 class that they've recorded video for. They just haven't posted it yet. So they said that should be posted soon. So you'll actually get latest, greatest iPhone iOS 5 stuff. There's Grand Central, because we're going to touch on Grand Central Dispatch today, I wanted to have a link to this resource. This is a phenomenal resource for all things related to Grand Central Dispatch, which is how threading is mostly handled nowadays inside of OS X and iPhone. Finally, Stack Overflow, because whenever you have a question, then let's admit it. When you type something into Google and you see a Stack Overflow link, that's the first one you go to. So, good answers here if you need them. Also, GitHub for Objective-C. I like to go and look at when I'm just starting to learn a language, I like to go see how other people have done it. Facebook uploaded their UI toolkit is all up on GitHub. So is, who else? Gowalla. Gowalla has a bunch of Objective-C code up on GitHub. So you can go actually see how other people are writing Objective-C code and get an idea on what might possibly be the right way to do it, not what you'll see today. So, today we're going to build a Twitter search app. It's going to look like this. And it shouldn't be too hard to follow along, shouldn't be too complicated to do. There are two UI controls on here. There is the search bar and a table view and a table view. And then, there'll be three because we'll actually have a UI table view cell view, so we can actually customize how the actual rows themselves look. So, any questions so far?
I guess
Everybody
if
just wants
you're
to
gonna
code, right?
if you're gonna cover it later, then don't let me interrupt it now. But I was really curious in that first snippet of code that you showed, where the automatic reference counting.
Okay, with automatic reference counting, I'll go ahead. It's not really there's not really a good place to cover it, so I'll just go ahead and cover it. Automatic reference counting basically means you don't have to do your auto release, retains, and releases like you do in anything prior to iOS 5. So anytime you'll see back on who here has done iPhone development? Okay, so when you get to your view controller, when you have your view your dialog method, those go away. Unless you have to do something really, really special, they mostly go away. Because usually all you did inside of a dialog method was did a bunch of release statements. Yeah. If you have to do something special, then yes, you still have your dialog method. But if all it was release statements, you don't need them anymore. Automatic reference counting is not garbage collection.
Compiler-based?
Yes, it is compiler-based reference counting. So it goes, okay, you created this variable up here, so when I exit here, I need to dealloc. I need to get rid of it. It needs to go away, and it does a release on it. It also handles doing auto releases for you. All of that stuff goes away. So you no longer have to basically remember, when I name a method, get something so-and-so with so-and-so, I no longer need to remember that I need to set that to auto release so that whoever calls it, when they dealloc it, it goes away.
So the method of auto release it's not based on that naming convention then?
Yeah, you're no longer bound by those naming conventions. However, those are Apple's naming guidelines, so you should definitely stick to those as much as possible. As you'll see in my code, I probably do not adhere to those because I'm just trying to get you some examples. But yeah, there were some naming conventions where, like, if you did get or returns A or something like that, you had to specify a certain memory releasing and auto releasing. So if you're actually going to do anything prior to iOS 5, you need to keep that in mind because you won't be able to use automatic reference counting.
Which devices are iOS 5?
I was just gonna.
3GS, 4, 4S. Anything before that can't run 5.
Before that, the 3 and I guess the 3.
3 and up could run 4.
Okay.
No, 3 couldn't run 4. No, it could run 4. You didn't get multitasking. That was the.
Yeah.
That's actually a really good
Put it
analogy.
down.
7, 8, 9.
I use
You have
piece of shit.
nightmares about that, don't you?
What's that?
That's when you change your phone.
Yeah, that's when I changed my phone. That's when I went from iPhone to Android. That made me angry.
So have you seen anywhere like Android, developer.android has a breakout of what the current deployment in Marketplace is as far as...
I haven't seen anything like that for Apple,
Okay.
mainly because most people assume they're running the latest. Because a good chunk of the population is going to upgrade their
Oh,
iPhone.
that's right. iPhone users always buy the latest.
Well, not only that, you can plug it in and download it. You plug it into iTunes and it goes, oh look, there's an update, and you download it and it downloads.
Well, but that's assuming for people that have hardware greater than 3, but most people wouldn't be sitting on 3 hardware now, probably.
No, there's probably nobody on 3
Just
hardware.
the people that are like, look, I got
Well,
the iPhone for
baby
$6.
People would have upgraded at the end of their plan, and since it's been a few years.
Basically, Apple has basically about a 2-year cycle, so they basically don't support phones outside of the 2 years. Which is kind of odd that they're supporting, I thought that was kind of odd, they're kind of supporting 3GS because that's 3 years back. But, because they've actually made
Is that
they made the 3GS the free phone,
Okay.
that's why they did it. So it was a marketing ploy to do that. Because that means next year the 4 will be the free phone, 4S will be the cheaper phone, and then whatever, iPhone 6. So it won't be 5. It doesn't follow name convention. iPhone 6 will be the newest model. But automatic reference counting is compiler-based reference counting. It is not garbage collection. If you want garbage collection, you have to go to MonoTouch or Mono for Android, and that gets you some garbage collection.
Now, so that brings up an interesting point. Since it's compiler-based, then it's not going to release it until the last reference is used.
Correct.
As far as the compiler has counted it, can you then do anything to get in and force something out if you want to force it out early because it's lower?
You can, but you will get a compiler warning.
Okay.
And they spent, if you go and watch, if you go to developer.apple.com, you can actually link to the WWDC videos that for Apple's developer conference, where they actually have a whole talk on automatic reference counting.
Okay.
They basically spent 2 years making sure that automatic reference counting is going to work. Because they were like, in order for us to get you to use it, you have to trust it. And so they spent a lot of time making sure that we could trust it. Problem thing is automatic reference counting is actually not an Apple thing. It's an LLVM thing. So it's been an LLVM for 2 or 3 years now. Apple just finally started. Apple added their own stuff to their implementation of LLVM, low-level virtual machine. And if anybody wants to learn about low-level virtual machine and really have a brain aneurysm, I highly recommend going to the LLVM website and reading the wiki. You'll go, huh? Because those people think on a level that I can't even possibly imagine to pretend to understand. So, I'm going to get into code. Does anybody else have any questions before we jump down onto that? Okay. So if you've never developed iPhone before, say hello to XCode. This is their IDE.
I don't see it.
Yeah, we're seeing the police box.
I mean, that's really cool.
That's awesome.
Say hello. I will fix that. Hold on.
Desktop.
Yeah.
Sorry. I forgot to turn mirroring back on. My deal was to turn mirroring back on after I exited the presentation.
That was awesome.
That was slick.
Hey, that's my biggest mistake for the evening. I think I'll be doing okay, right? So now you'll see it, right?
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. And let's look at some code real quick just to see what it looks like on the screen. Can y'all see that okay, or do I need to?
It's cool this far.
You have 20 over 13.
Let's see. How do I increase the font again? Apparently, I can't do that.
Can you not use like command shift plus plus?
I tried that. It didn't work.
Oh, so you told me last time, I wrote it down. You have to do something to turn zooming on. It's like one key set to turn it on, and then another to use it. I'll tell you in just a second. So, load it.
I'm already hating on this Xcode thing.
Is it
If it's that hard to make it look
Visual
big.
Studio?
Okay, iPhone
I
Zoom,
need all that.
you do Option
Yeah.
Command B to turn it on, and you won't see anything. So Option Command B turns
Okay.
it on, and then Option Command plus and minus should zoom in and out.
Ooh, maybe.
I mean, that's the whole screen zoom, but.
Right, it's all screen
Close
zoom, but
enough.
Yeah, but,
And then you can pan around if you move
yeah,
it.
me too.
yeah, we can see.
Okay,
it,
for the most part, can y'all all see that code, or is that? I mean, I can
see it.
probably make it bigger.
Yeah.
I'll just make
Yeah,
it
I've
bigger.
got the code on my screen too, just.
I'll just make it bigger.
Well, now what you're clicking on. Okay. If not, you can happily move your seat closer, I guess.
Here you go.
That's good.
Is that better?
Yeah, that would be good for the camera.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Okay.
Sorry, camera.
Okay, there we go. So this is Xcode. So I'm going to kind of cover, because like I said, I put a framework in place because I didn't really want to have to build network connectivity and some of my classes. For those who aren't aware, iPhone and OS X force you into a model view controller design pattern. If you try to leave that, you are going to cause yourself more pain than you want to deal with. So just stick with the MVC pattern.
What is an MVC?
It's basically MVC.
Is it true MVC?
Model views and controllers. So
Yeah, they're called that, just because it's called.
yeah. It's about as close to MVC as you're going to
Let's get pedantic.
get. So I mean, if you want to get specific, I'm sure JB would love to tell you the technicalities of why it shouldn't be called MVC.
You could just look at the view controller and go, wow, this looks almost exactly like the code behind. Like, yes, it is.
So again, once again, we're based on C. So you have header files, which define your objects, and then you have implementation files, which are your implementation. So in this case, it's .h files for your headers and .m for your implementation, rather than .c or .cc for C++ files. You can do .h and .mm, which is Objective-C++. Do not ask me the differences between Objective-C and Objective-C++. I do not know. But I do know it exists. That's about the extent of my knowledge on Objective-C++. It exists. So in this case, I've defined a tweet item, which takes the username, their tweet, and their image URL. And as you can see, we define these right here, and then we make them properties that we can access from our implementation, which we'll see in a second. We will synthesize these variables, and that gives us some level of dot notation, so we can do username dot length will give us the length.
What is the non-atomic and strong?
I can't find a decent definition for non-atomic, even though I've looked high and low.
It's
but-
just multi-threading.
I think so.
It's gotta keep
But the strong is basically, because we're now in automatic reference counting,
Oh.
this used to be retained, which meant it would retain it in memory until you no longer, until you specifically get rid of it. And strong is basically the equivalent in automatic reference counting. So in automatic reference counting, all your retains here would become strong. For more information on automatic reference counting, for more of the cruft, the deep down stuff, please go watch the WWDC video or read the Apple documentation. if you have a project that already exists and you want to move it to automatic reference counting, there's actually a thing up here. It might not have it because I'm already on automatic reference counting. It looks like it's not here because I already have it. But in an older project, there's actually an option up in one of these menus that actually will say switch to automatic reference counting, and it will go through all of your code, remove all of the retains, all of the releases, or remove all of that. It will create diffs. It will show you the diffs of what it's going to do, and then you can say, okay, I trust you, get rid of it, and then it will switch some compiler settings and turn your project into an ARC project. It is really, seriously, like, depending on how many files you have, it is like 3 or 4 clicks. It's incredibly insane. It's totally awesome. They really did a good job of that. So here's an implementation of my tweet item. So this stat synthesized would give us some dot notation, which we don't actually access here in the thing, so we don't really do it. But we initialize ourselves, we return if it's nil, and then we.
Can you, so when I used synthesize before, it was when I had put some controls on a screen and I wired up the outlets, and I thought synthesize did the work of going, looking it up by, ID or whatever, and wiring the instance up. But here, there's no controls involved. So what does synthesize actually mean?
Synthesize gives you username dot, like all the methods you could access. It does the dot notation. It gives you access
I thought it was the,
to your prop. I think it's just
getters
to your
and setters.
yeah, it's getters and setters.
That's what it is.
That's basically what you're doing.
Oh, it's dynamic.
So
Because you previously, before you had synthesize, you had to set when you did the.
so you would normally would have had to do
yeah.
username, because that stuff is still there. So username, let's
Bracket, self.
username, get.
Like if you do like self get, you can see that you actually have that.
Yeah, it's left bracket, self, get, username.
I'm pretty sure it was like you can do username dot. Apparently my code completion is being a little slow. You get your getters and setters on the properties of those variables.
I think it's simplified that previously when you had to set, you had to be like, if this thing is, alright, if I have it,
Yeah,
release this, and do this, and blah, 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 and have like a whole song and dance that they had.
And they basically did, because like 90% of the time, that's what you did.
Yeah.
So they took care of your 80 or 90% solution for doing getters and setters. If you still need to do custom getting and setting, you can still create your custom get this, get set that to do your stuff. But that's mostly what it does. That's mostly what I got rid of.
Okay.
It gets rid of your 90% case.
Now, would you still outside of this file be able to, would you use dotted notation, or could you use bracket notation, or can you use both?
You can use both. In fact, if you want to get specific, when we get to implementing this guy, we'll touch on. Remind me, we'll touch on that.
Okay.
And we'll test whatever you want to test. And in this case, I also have a Twitter client, so that I can actually handle calling the Twitter search API with the query and getting back stuff. In this case, actually, you know what else I want to do? I'll leave that alone. And this is the implementation. So one thing I want to draw your attention to is this guy right here. This is Grand Central Dispatch. This is threading my web request onto a separate thread. In this case, we set on my mouse. Here we set we grab a specific queue, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on Grand Central Dispatch, but you have some queues. You have your default priority, high priority, low priority. And in this case, I'm getting just the default priority level for the queue. I then create a process group. So you create basically a group that you throw all your stuff into that you want to run. And you can create your own of these. There are some default ones that you should throw into. In this case, I want to run this and wait for it to run, so I'm throwing it into my own so I can monitor that queue essentially. And then here, we're running this in that queue. This handles all the handles getting the JSON.
So is the caret curly brace basically going to?
This is a block.
Okay, it's a block. Okay.
That's like synonymous with like an anonymous method in C#.
Yes, that's exactly what it is in C#. It's also very similar to a block in Ruby, a block in C. This actually is more equivalent to a block, at least syntactically, more to a block in C than C#. But basically, just now all these methods get run. Think of this as running from C#. Think of this as running parallel. I think it's parallel.perform task or something like that.
Parallels framework. But
Yeah, it's the-
so any values you have, or any variables
Methods and
that-
stuff in there.
You've got to put underscore block when you to access them.
Yes, because I need to be able to access them from within the block. So that underscore block is what tells it I can access it from within the block.
Okay.
That was my next question, sorry.
Is this, so,
I haven't actually had to talk about any of this stuff, so I'm trying my best here, people.
it's all right. Is this, the underscore block access thing is really cool. How is this different than like the thread pool? Is it because you have priorities that you can, like you can group things and put them?
You like messing with thread pools?
Do I like messing with thread pools?
And
No,
watching
but-
them and monitoring them and doing all of that stuff?
No, but how is this easier?
I don't, if I don't want to, like if I don't care about actually monitoring this, I can get rid of these guys. And just say, throw it onto a separate thread. And GCD handles monitoring it, running it, it puts it into a queue, runs it. I don't have to write any code around that.
Yeah, that's Q user work item though.
I have not had that much good experience doing threading in .NET. I just haven't.
Okay.
Every time I try, it becomes this complicated mess of. But of course, I haven't actually had a chance to really mess with the parallel framework too much. What I have messed with is very similar to this. So this I like, and when I mess with the parallel framework, I was like, oh, this is just like this. I like this. Because I don't really want to care, I really don't want to have to think about thread lines and having to monitor all this stuff. Just run this on a separate thread, not the main thread, so I can at least update the UI on my main thread and do that stuff.
So does the search, it looks like the next thing you're doing is a wait, right? So I guess search Twitter with query, is that synchronous?
This is synchronous, yes.
Okay.
All of these things happen synchronously. So this one runs, then this one, and then it runs, and then it exits out. Because I need that tweets object to actually have stuff in it when I come back.
Well, I'm talking about when whatever code calls search Twitter with query, because you're doing a dispatch group wait, search Twitter with query isn't going to, even though it's happening on a separate thread, that method's not going to return until that separate thread is done executing. Is that correct?
Yes, but I can still update because you can't do, it doesn't block the main UI thread in iPhone because pretty much all your stuff happens in iPhone on the main thread, just like in Android, and I'm pretty sure just like Windows Phone.
Mm-hmm.
This allows you to actually do stuff on the main thread, like updating your UI, while that
So
stuff
even
runs
if
in
you
the
call
background.
this from a button click, you'd still be okay?
Yes.
Okay.
And as you'll see, I didn't want to have to write all this here because this would have taken me way too long, and I want to get to the actual iPhone UI stuff. But I want to touch on this stuff so that you can at least see what's happening in the background, so it doesn't look like a magic black box. You just go, oh, he faked that. No, I didn't actually fake it. We're actually going to call the Twitter API and do stuff with it. And
So
then
the
here are
whole
my
point- The whole point of the thread is simply to separate it out from the main UI thread?
yes,
Okay,
that is the point.
because it looked synchronous.
Well, this is why I encourage you to go read up on GCD, because even though it says synchronous, it's not because it's not happening on the main thread. This queue
Well,
priority and
yeah,
this group,
I got
it's
that
happening in
part,
a
but
separate thing.
It looked like conceptually synchronous, so I was trying to get, okay.
Yeah, it takes a while to wrap your head around it. It's not really it's happening synchronously. Like each one of those happens in order, rather than I'm just dumping them in, and whichever one happens to get run first gets run first.
Right.
Especially with Grand Central Dispatch, it's mostly first in, first out.
Yeah, I think the confusing thing to me, and I'll go read up on this, is Because this method doesn't complete, because it's waiting on a group, in .NET that would be like thread.wait. You know, it's executing on a
So-
separate thread, but I'm waiting, so if I
So you're
call Join
joining.
button click, the UI thread would be waiting for this other thread to complete, so the UI
But you
wouldn't
could, in
update.
theory, start another thread to update your UI. You're not blocking that UI thread by when you throw it off to the separate thread. The whole point of this is just to not block that main thread.
I understand.
So, and here are all the methods that are getting called, just called out so I can separate the data, processing the data. Here we're doing an async call. So process all that, everything that you get back. Just do it asynchronous because I don't really care when it gets done and what order it gets done, just as long as it gets done. And there we go. And in our case, we're using this AES HTTP request. This is a third-party Objective-C library for handling HTTP requests. It's no longer supported. The developer announced like 2 or 3 weeks ago that he was just not going to do it anymore. He said there's better stuff out there. He points everybody to Gowala's AF networking library, which has a block notation and it works really well in the GCD. But the Gowala one actually requires JSONKit because they use it for their stuff and they use all JSON. So that's kind of the structure I put in place just so that we can actually build our app.
And if I followed your pattern correctly, you're calling the API, you're getting back a JSON blob that inside of it has an array of these objects, and you have basically an init with JSON array for each one that you're kind of deserializing it
Yes.
into each of those.
And then I have my tweet item class, which I create out of that array, and I return an NS array of tweet items.
Okay.
So that's pretty much what happens. We make a call, get the JSON back, we deserialize the JSON, and we return an array of tweet items. Probably just like you would do in .NET and
Yep.
other stuff. So most of your major concepts don't change, just your syntax.
Yep.
Have fun. So this is our we have our UI view. We have our view controller header file and then our implementation file. So to start with, we're going to talk about implementing the header file. So one of the first things we need to do is because we're going to have a search bar and we're going to have a table view. Those are our two of our three primary UI objects. Well, for table views, you need a delegate and a data source. So to do that, we need to implement those on here. So for here, we just do UI table view delegate, UI table view data source. Go ahead and do that. So that's telling the header file, or what will also be our implementation file, that we are in charge of handling the data source, and we are the delegate for the table view.
Isn't that kind of like implementing an interface?
Yes, that's pretty much exactly what it is.
Okay.
And then since we're going to have a search bar, the search bar has its own delegate as well. We're going to do UI search bar delegate. So now this thing will also be the delegate for the search bar. So now we're also going to need a way to access our search bar. So we're going to do our search bar, and if I go too fast, let me know. Hopefully you can follow along. Search bar, and then we're just I'm not sure what the correct word. We're basically not really initializing, but we're letting the controller know that this exists. We're going to do a table view. I'll call this and then we're going to need an array to store the tweet items that we get back when we make the call to Twitter.
Forgot
So-
semicolon on the last one.
I'm sorry?
Forgot a semicolon at the end of the
Oh,
last one.
good catch, thank you. Nice array. And then we're going to need to define properties for those. go ahead and type this and I'll explain it in a second. But we're gonna set it as an IB outlet. I have our search bar, and we'll name this Twitter search bar. And we're gonna do the same thing for the table, basically the same thing for the table view.
So IB is input buffer?
Interface builder?
Interface builder.
Yeah,
Let's go, okay.
interface builder, and then an outlet is
Oh, okay.
you can attach a UI element to an outlet.
Oh, okay.
So
it's
there,
like
there
data
used to be a
binding.
separate tool that was outside of the IDE called Interface Builder that did all your UI design.
Yeah.
And an outlet is a way of basically allowing them to almost automatically wire up your code behind to a control instance.
Thank you. I couldn't think of a right way to say that. And when we get into the
Dependency
actual
property?
interface builder, you'll see them a little bit better.
Not really. You know in .NET,
No.
in .NET when you go into WinForm or you go into XAML and you just give the thing a name, it automatically shows up in code. That doesn't happen on an iPhone or Android, so this is
You
the
have to declare.
the IB outlets are a way of automatically like kind of importing the whole control into your code as one property. But it actually represents a single instance on the screen. It's kind of like the plumbing that automatically happens when you give it a name.
Okay.
It's better good that we have somebody who's actually done more.
Yes.
Because, like I said, I've only been doing this about 4 months, so I'm not the expert, just nobody else would do this. So I'm doing the-
IB outlet is meaningless, except that you need it to integrate with Interface Builder. Interface Builder is looking for that.
Yes.
It's just like a mark.
Speaking of interface builder, we're gonna get that. So as you, okay, so we've defined our properties, our IB outlets for our search bar and our search table, because those will be our UI elements that we will wire up. And then we have our NS array of search results as suites. And you notice I don't have that as an IB outlet because that's not going to go to an actual UI element. So that's just going to be something we're going to need access to in the implementation. So now that we have our header file kind of laid out, we can go ahead.
Now, quick question.
Sure.
You've defined so this is in our header file. You've defined an interface called view controller, but wouldn't this normally be like a little bit more descriptive than that? Like
Yes.
Tweet view controller?
Yes, it would be like if you wanted to call this your Twitter search view controller, you would do that.
Okay.
I wasn't trying to be that descriptive. This is basically a very intro class. You know,
Yeah.
your standard development rules apply them accordingly. You know, be descriptive. I'm just trying to give you the basics. So now that we've defined our header file,
Do it, don't do it like.
yes, do as I say, not as I do.
And if you don't mind, go back real quick.
Sure.
For those of you who haven't done this, in his interface he has like UI search bar delegate, UI table view delegate. The way, say if you've done .NET, you're familiar with like if I've got a button I can do a click handler, right? And you can have multiple click handlers subscribe to that button. Objective-C almost does it the other way around where the button can have one person that or one piece of code that it calls when it gets clicked. And that's called its delegate. So what he's saying is inside of his controller, he's saying, I want to be able to handle all of the events that UI search bar can give me. So I'll implement this UI search bar delegate, which basically says I'm going to provide all the methods that UI search bar can call to notify me when things happen in UI search bar.
And you only have to implement the ones you care about.
That's true. Which is the magic of messages, which is why messages are not exactly the same thing as methods, but that's...
But they're, you know...
Conceptually, it's close enough, you just don't have to implement everything in the contract.
Correct. You're not... And that's why saying that these are like doing an interface is not quite, because an interface you have to implement everything.
Absolutely.
You have to implement everything. Whereas these, you only have to implement the ones you care about. There are some delegates, like the table view delegate. There are a couple methods you have to implement, like one of which will implement. There's one that defines the number of rows in the table view, and then there's one that defines how to load each cell for the table view. Those two you have to do, otherwise your program will crash because it will go, I don't know what to do with the table view.
And
What the heck?
is the documentation pretty good at telling you which ones are
Yes,
mandatory?
I believe so. It's been a while since I looked at the table view one, but I do believe they tell you. Your program will crash, and it will tell you what method it can't find.
Yeah.
That's it. So we're gonna go back, so now that we've got this defined, we're gonna look at interface builder. This is part of interface builder. The other part is here. So down here are all our possible objects that we can tie into. Let's see, what was that? Control Alt plus to get in there.
Yep.
There we go. So all of our different types of controls. We have our table view. Down here we'll see the search bar. Here's our search bar. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and drag this guy over to here. And they're really nice about giving you, clicking everything into place for you, kind of like Visual Studio has its grid. They're very nice about this. And we're going to want to implement the table view right under that guy. Okay, let me go ahead and zoom back out.
Did it automatically set the springs? So obviously there is only one screen resolution, but so if you go landscape, did it automatically set the results pane to spring to fill the screen?
Yes, that's right
Yeah.
here.
Yep, auto sizing is on all sides, so it set the springs automatically.
Those are automatic. If you want to get into specifics about how things should, when you flip things around, how they should look, this is where you would do it. We're not going to concern ourselves with that. In fact, we're not even going to flip the device. I'm not even sure what would happen if we did that. But one thing on the table view is I'm going to set this row height right here.
I'm actually getting an error on the code. I'm getting property Twitter search bar requires method set to be defined to synthesize dynamic or provide a method.
Yeah, because you tried to compile the code. We haven't actually gotten
No, I haven't tried to compile anything.
You're getting, is it an error or is it a warning?
It's giving me a warning, but it's
Yeah.
causing me to not go forward very far.
You should be able to leave, you should still be able to leave.
You can go
it
do
goes
your
in-
design work,
Okay.
because there's no @synthesize method in your info.
Because we haven't actually gotten to the implementation file yet, so that, you're going to get
I was
errors.
just wondering if you were, 'cause I didn't see it on your screen, I thought maybe.
I haven't actually told it to compile yet.
Okay.
And it
Same.
automatically compiles in the background as you save. You probably may
Didn't
not have
just-
I don't
saved
think
the
I had
file.
clicked the save button.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on the row height button, on this row height, we're going to go ahead and change this to 75 now, because I know later when I actually build my cell, I'm going to make it a height of 75. Because if I don't do it now, I will forget, and when we run the app the first time, it'll look like crap. And we don't want that to happen, right? So, well, I'm sure some of you would love to see it happen. Let's be honest.
Come on.
People love to see me fail. So anyway, so we have various I forget, I think they call these inspectors. We have various inspectors for our UI elements. So here this gives us a quick help. It tells us that this is a UI table view that I've got selected. Here we can select the type of class. So if you create a custom, your own table view controller, or your own class that inherits from a UI table view and has some special handling, you could then define that here in this, where this says class, and then it will actually use that version of the table view.
Is that when you do the control drag thing to wire up the outlet? Is that what that's for?
No, that's on another inspector. This is actually more specifically for, I need a table view controller that does something really, really weird. So you create your own class that implements, that actually inherits
Oh, that's
from
right.
from the table
So,
view,
yeah,
UI table view class.
Because this is actually XML that it's going to load up and then instantiate these things. So
Based
this
on
needs to know if you need a different
If you
version.
need a different class,
Got it.
yes. This is most of the basic stuff. What your font look like, if it has a font element. Is it hidden? Is it not hidden? In our case, we're going to hide this because on startup, I don't want to see a table view on startup. I only want to see one after I have search results. You can set zoom levels. There's a whole bunch of stuff here that you can do. I'm not going to get into it because it's just, if you've ever done Visual Studio and you've looked at your UI controls, this is your properties deal. That's what you're looking at. This sets your various sizing options for flipping, resizing, all that automatic stuff. Again, If you wanted more information, we're not going to touch on that too much today. If you want more about that, go look it up. This is where we do our connections, right here. In this case, we don't really have anything to connect to the table view specifically. But we're going to click this Files Owner. This is a Files Owner is basically your UI or your view controller.h file. That's what it means when it says File Owner. It's you're going back to your actual header file and implementation files. So in this case, you see the Twitter. We can see. Let me zoom in a little bit. So you see the Twitter search bar and the Twitter search results table, which we defined as IV outlets previously. Those now show up in Interface Builder.
Oh, okay. So you got to be on the far right-hand corner, show the connections inspector. See that? Okay.
Yes. I'm trying to go slow. If you're
No, it's just hard to see that that's actually selected because it's just barely.
Yeah, it doesn't do, yeah. So we're gonna click this guy, the Twitter search bar, and we're gonna drag, you just right click and drag. This is our search bar.
Right clicks.
So,
What are you talking about?
left click, sorry.
Just click
Not
and
me.
drag.
Y'all
Click and drag.
y'all act like I'm actually paying attention to what I'm doing.
Right click is command if you
I'm
want
just
to
talking for my health.
If you want to click on the other part, right?
So left click on our search results table. We can drop this directly on the table. As you saw before, I dragged it over to here.
Yeah.
You can also do it onto the actual UI element, so you can actually do either one.
And I had not seen it done this way before, but did you know that you can also bring up the H file?
Yeah,
And do a
drag-
control
drag
drag and it will automatically generate the properties for you too.
Yeah, I know you can do that. For some reason, the visual
You like to
representation.
do the interface
When you get into
first and then
mono,
the
when you get into
properties.
mono develop, or when you
Yeah.
get into doing mono touch, you have to do it that way. You don't get an option.
Okay.
So, enjoy the nice, pretty UI when you can,
Yeah.
because it's a lot better. So like I said, we have to define our data source and our delegate for the table view, and we're going to set that to the view controller itself, right? That's what we talked about earlier. So as you can see here in our outlets, again, I have the table view selected. We have a data source and a delegate outlet. These are there by default. We didn't actually define IV outlets on these. These are there buried deep down in Apple's things. So but we're going to drag, just like we did with the other deals, we're going to drag these over to File Owner, because remember we said that the view controller itself will be the delegate and the data source, or will handle the data source rather. There's the data source, and there's the delegate. Same thing with the search bar view, with the UI search bar. We have a delegate outlet, drag that over to Files Owner. Now all of those things will be handled by our view controller, and we will now go to our implementation file and implement some of this stuff.
Now what, are you on the last tab, the one with the right arrow at the top
Yes.
of that? What's that tab called?
It's called Connections.
Connections, okay.
Connections Inspector.
Okay.
And then we have, this guy is the Attributes Inspector, and this guy is the Size Inspector.
Mhm.
So did everybody see that? I can zoom in and do it again. This is our Attributes Inspector, Size Inspector, and the Connections Inspector. There used to be some really cool keyboard shortcuts that you could use to get to these when Interface Builder was its own program, but so I think those all went away when they tied it in, and I haven't been able to find them since. In the book I have, even though it says to do iPhone 4, it still uses XCode 3, so they didn't actually update that. So any questions so far about what we've done, how we did it, where we went to do it?
I'm still curious, what does it mean by files owner? Like, I understand the connections, I just don't understand the files owner.
Imagine if I drew a line from Files Owner to my view controller.h file.
Okay.
Yeah, see, we've got, there's the view controller.xib. XIB stands for XML Interface Builder, if I remember correctly. That's the design surface that we're working on.
Right.
And then there's the .h and the m file with the
Okay,
same
so
name. So files owner represents the header of the same name of the
Okay.
XIB file.
So it's going by name.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah, see right here?
Matching the class name.
See this
or-
class view controller right here in this,
Yeah.
which one's this guy? This is the the identity inspector.
Yeah.
See that this guy says class view controller?
Is there
So
an
our,
inspector gadget?
this guy here is our view controller.
Is there a gadget inspector?
No. It's our interface view controller. So this file's owner is actually
Okay.
connected to the class of view controller. So that's
So then what is the point of first responder?
a little bit more in detail. First responder is the item that let's see if I can do this right. Imagine WPF, how you can have your bubble up actions.
Yes.
There you go.
Okay.
That's the best way. I don't know if that's a very accurate way to describe it. That's the best way I know
Yeah,
how.
the bubbling thing helps.
It's
Yeah.
because you'll have this thing which might respond to something, which might that might not
Yeah.
respond to something. So it bubbles up until it gets to the first thing that will respond to it.
Okay.
Similar concept. Your first responder is the first thing that will respond to an action.
Okay.
So for example, when your keyboard is up, the keyboard is the first responder on iPhone.
Okay.
So your keyboard's up. So when you're done with the keyboard, when you actually hit in our case, we'll see it. When you hit the search button, the first thing we'll do is we will tell the search bar to resign the first responder, which in that case would be the keyboard. So the
Yeah.
keyboard resigns its first responding and thus goes away. So does that make sense?
Yes.
Did I explain that well?
The bubbling.
Well enough.
Then why do you have to call resign first responder on the text box, and why couldn't you just call resign first responder on the whole UI or as a global method to get rid of the keyword?
In some cases, you have to do that. Like in one example I can give where I actually had to do that was I actually had a view within inside a view, and I had its view controller. I had one view controller load up another view and a view controller inside of it because I needed it to handle some stuff. And that thing had a text box in it. When I clicked the text box, it grabbed first responder. But because that view was inside of another view, I actually had to loop through all the views that were on. I had to bubble up and get it to go, okay, resign first responder, then go up a level, say resign first responder, which actually then got rid of the keyboard. I don't know if that explains it well enough now that I think about
Well,
it.
I'm just wondering if maybe it's simpler than that, like first responder being whatever is receiving focus, receiving
Well, yeah,
input.
that's
So
it.
if you say, if you say resign, then it's no longer receiving focus, and then because nothing that can receive text has focus, then the keyboard automatically goes away.
I don't know enough about the inner workings to be able to tell you if you're right or wrong.
Okay, fair enough.
Sorry. I wish I could. I wish I could say, yeah, that's right. And but I just don't. I just know that if there's a keyboard up,
Yeah.
and you say resign first responder, boom, the keyboard goes away.
I'm familiar with that.
And so that, to me, is the best I can do for you. So now that we've got our UI elements kind of in place, we don't have the table cell yet that we're going to create. We'll get to that in a second. We're going to go ahead and go implement some of our delegate methods. Or at least we're going to get to the implementation file. So, Josh, this is where we're going to solve your problem.
All of these methods that are already in there, did that happen by you did file new file of some particular type?
When I created the project, it creates a default. It created a default view controller. All that stuff, all the stuff that you see in here right now is in there,
Okay.
with the exception of the synthesize that I just placed.
Got it.
So we're going to synthesize all of those properties that we defined in our header file.
Quick question, is there an easy way to split the window so that you can see the header file while you're writing the implementation?
I think if you click this middle button,
Oh, okay.
it's going to look like crap on my screen because I've got all this stuff going, but there we go. How's that look?
Oh, that's-
It's the little picture of the tuxedo, it's called the assistant editor.
Yeah, this thing?
Right here, just click on that little guy right there. And then when it comes up, you can just click on
Okay.
your page file.
But the text completion is pretty decent, so
Yeah.
there we just synthesized all of those properties. So now we have our lovely get methods that you were talking about earlier. So now we don't have to do get getters and setters. It's already there. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to get rid of this assistant header because I don't like looking at both of them. It drives me nuts. So one thing we're going to do in this view did unload. This is what happens when the view gets unloaded is no longer, when it's no longer, I think it's when it's no longer the main view, and there's, it won't, no, it doesn't do it when it's not the main view, it does it when it's not the main view and it's, there was a memory needed to get rid of it. When you get a memory, where is it? Here we go. Sorry, I'm trying to remember all this. View controller can receive a did receive memory warning, which then you would say, okay, well I no longer need these things, get rid of them. This could actually in turn get rid of the view controller itself. If somewhere down the line you told it to get rid of this view controller, and this view didn't unload, is where you would get rid of all of your, where you would set all the things you have actually assigned to nil. So in our case, we're going to do stuff like self dot Twitter search bar equals nil, self dot Twitter search results table equals nil, and then self dot results
Twitter search results.
search results equals nil.
So even though in the synthesize, or not the synthesize, but when you, the app property and it had, I forget what the second parameter was, that didn't automatically do this for you?
The strong.
The strong, yeah.
No. This is something that you still have to do.
Because you're getting rid of the reference on the view controller itself?
Yes.
Not the model.
Not necessarily the reference altogether. And all these methods, most of these methods are actually, all these methods are here when you create a new view controller class. So if you go to File, New, I want to create a view controller, you name your view controller, boom, this guy gets created, and it has these default methods in there: did load, view did unload, will appear, did appear, will disappear, did disappear. All that stuff gets handled. It has some default stuff in there. Most of it's just calling super, because it inherits from a UI view controller class, so it's just calling the super method. You need to do something very specific that you would do it in the appropriate pre-created method. I'm not going to go into I'm not going to spend any time discovering what each of those do. To do something special, you'll find out you need to do something special when you do it. So, this pragma mark stuff is basically just a way, it's, we're in C, we're in the C-based language, so these kind of things just they're there to help the developer keep track of where they are. They're not necessarily going to get compiled for anything. These have absolutely no special meaning to the compiler. They're basically comments. Table. Delegate methods. We're also going to do our our delegate methods. Okay. If I remember this correctly, void search bar. Again, I remember I told you the code completion in XCode is actually pretty decent, so if you kind of know what you're looking for, just type the first few letters of bring up selection. In our case, we want the search button clicked. So when we click a search bar in iPhone, it brings up a tech keyboard, and the enter or return key is actually replaced with a magnifying glass for search. So that would be the search bar. So in our case, we want to say, hey, when the search bar or when the search button is placed or clicked, first thing we want to do, string is going to be search bar, text. Trying to combine two different syntaxes is not going to help me at all, is it? So the first thing we're going to do is define we're going to get the text, set it to a string, so that we can then use that later. We'll show some of the code completion. So if our query length greater than 0, we're going to go ahead and does everybody understand that? Is that fairly straightforward? Okay, good. Moving on. So this is actually going to perform my search. keep all things nicely named, and set my local array for this class to the search results that we get back, because this guy returns an NS array full of tweet objects. And then we're going to tell, then we can do if. We're going to have a couple layers of branching here. I know it's bad code, but, you know, example. Do as I say, not as I do. Search result says tweets. Our count greater than 0. We're going to go ahead and say self dot Twitter search results table reload data. This will reload the data, and we'll get to those methods in a minute. And then we'll tell the self.twitter search results table hidden equals no. Because remember we set the guy to, again, trying to do syntax. Remember we set that table view to hidden when we were in interface builder. We set it to hidden, so now that we have data to show, we're saying, hey, I actually want to see you. Don't remain hidden.
So I see a mixture of using dotted notation and bracket notation. Is it now with the dotted you're thinking of it like properties, and
Yes.
with the bracket notation you're thinking of it like methods basically?
That, and again, I could be doing it wrong. So I'm not the final say as to what you see here. I'm basically just trying to show you how to create an app.
Like, could you have done, so I see like search bar dot text, which makes sense if you're accessing it as a property, but then I see bracket search results as tweets count. Could that have been search results tweets dot count and not use the bracket?
I believe so.
Is it a method or a function?
Well, technically they're both.
I could have used dot notation, it looks like. Again, I could be doing it wrong. Don't take my word for it. I'm sure if Ben was here, he'd be going, nope, you're doing it wrong. Nope, you're doing it wrong. None of it. Look at it and tell me how to do it. What's that?
God, that's the way I've been doing it when I'm working on stuff.
Okay.
My guy ultimately over there was not a dot fan. He did not like dot notation at all. And whenever I want to start fighting, I just go in there and be like, dot notation's so great. And he goes off to why.
Yeah, when I actually went to the Big Nerd Ranch training last year for iPhone and Android, and they were like, don't use dot, do not use it. I was like, okay. They didn't have a good reason, but they're like, don't.
You get people who are language purists, like, oh, they had it as a language, I'm never going to use it. It's
Exactly.
And it's like, yeah, just get over it.
Yeah, they took your, what was it, the coding calisthenics for object-oriented design or something, where you could only use one dot per line or
Yes.
something?
Yeah. That's,
Too extreme.
They tried to
that's,
hack their way through that. We're
is
doing
that,
it.
I think it's law of Demeter.
Yeah.
It's one of the principles, right? One of the solid principles is you're generally not supposed to do that.
Oh,
There are exceptions to every rule, of course, but you try to do it less often. So
it's a code now, because you're not only that like gradually based on all this stuff, but then you also generally take code smell because you start wondering why,
Cohesion, right?
who are you, what type of message are you passing down to this many people?
yeah, it's
Why?
there's the I can't remember.
But there've been arguments about Rails breaking that law.
Yeah,
And
and you actually
violates it big time.
yeah, you do actually violate it kind of big time in
And
Rails.
they're like, this is all wrong. Those people like me are like, no.
Again, there are exceptions to every rule. There are exceptions to every rule. So, really any non-understanding about what this method is doing? It should be, I would hope, fairly straightforward.
Now, okay, I see you calling on line 76 reload data, which obviously we're going to have to fill in some code on line 84 to actually provide the data.
Yes.
So wouldn't you want to reload data even if the count is 0? Because if they had 5 results on the screen, did a new search to have it return 0 results, then would you want to clear the list out?
Well, we never actually see the list if it was.
Yeah, you're saying, so you do
But I'm saying-
one successful search, you get a list
Yeah,
back,
and
and
then
then you
a
do a new
fail.
search, which is no records back. You just leave it open.
Yeah,
I'm just giving you crap right
yeah. In theory,
Go on.
you probably should do that. But for all intensive demonstration purposes today, I'm not trying. I wish it was better code. I really do. But as far as just trying, I only have 2 hours. And
Yeah.
trying to fit it all in 2 hours. So now we're gonna mess with our delegate methods for our UI table view. And then we're gonna actually do one, create our cell, and then come back and do the other one. So first one we're gonna do. I believe it's an NS integer. There we go. Number of rows in selection. This basically tells us, or number of rows in sections. I'm sorry, not selection. So this is us telling the table view how many rows it's going to have. In our case, we're going to return self dot search results as tweets count. That's it. That's all that method does. It's a very basic understanding of what that method does. I'm sure somebody will do much more complicated stuff.
I'm assuming there's only one section and you can have multiple sections.
You could have multiple sections, yes. When you get it, like if you ever look at an iPhone, when you scroll through contacts,
Yes.
I believe each letter is a section. Is how they define that. It's how you get your
Grouping.
group. Yeah, thank you. Grouping. Be nice if I could speak sometimes, you know. Claudia, are we doing good on the video? Is the video doing fine?
Yeah,
Okay,
pretty good.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and this takes a UI table view cell, and we need it to be a pointer to the cell. Table view cell for row at index path, and the index path. And we're going to go ahead and do this UI table view cell, cell. We're going to implement more into this method in a second. I just wanted to get its basic structure in place. But basically what this method will do is this custom cell that we're going to go make, this is where we will define and build it. If you didn't have a custom cell, you would still use this method to build out the basic cell that you get inside of a table view. So either way, when you're building your cells, this is where you do it. We're just going to have a custom one, so we're going to have some special stuff that goes into it. And I might start cheating and looking at my code sheet in a little bit because we only have about another 35 minutes.
Okay, so quick question. So
Sure.
on our interface thing, we were saying we're going to do UI table view delegate and all that stuff in our header file. We just have to pick one thing that we overwrite or that we
Yeah, you
implement
can pick multiples.
just to get to compile, because it says incomplete implementation until you do that, right? So that's just,
No, actually, when you implement those,
yeah, because if we didn't put this like last one in here, it wouldn't compile. Is what I'm saying.
The interface itself,
Yeah.
actually it will compile. Or at least it did for me the other day.
yeah, the interface, if you even call it that, their
Yeah.
delegate, you can mark inside of it which ones are optional, which ones are required.
Okay.
What that's warning you is that you haven't implemented the ones that are marked as required. You'd have to look at the documentation to see which
So,
ones are
so
required.
Xcode's not cool enough to go ahead and just say, these are the required ones, put a blank stub in there?
Yeah, not that I've seen. There might be a nice
Yeah.
keyboard command shortcut or right click on something and have it do it. I haven't seen that yet.
Okay. So
There
that's
is,
a fail.
if you don't like Xcode, our lovely people at JetBrains have written an IDE for doing Objective-C development called AppCode. So you get all of your IntelliJ, ReSharper stuff inside of their AppCode IDE for doing iPhone development. And it's compatible with the latest SDKs and stuff like that. And I believe they have a sale going right now for a personal license for $69. So if you really like ReSharper or IntelliJ or RubyMine or whatever, and you would much rather do your stuff in there, you can do that. The only thing you won't get, you'll still need Xcode for, is Interface Builder. Because nobody seems to have made a nice UI for that yet, outside of Xcode for that.
And can you run that on a non-Mac?
No, not to my knowledge. Well, you can't do iPhone development on Mac.
Well, obviously you can't compile until then, but if somebody came out with an IDE that you could allow developers to run
Then
and
have
write
a-
code and then just have a
Somebody
online
has a
build
cloud-based
server.
Mac service now. I just heard about
Yeah,
it.
Actually,
I
to do
tried
iPhones
that.
on a to do iPhone apps on a build server, your build server has to be a Mac.
Yeah, I know, this
Yeah, there's a
It's a-
cloud-based service
there's a
now. That
Mac in the cloud or something like that.
Yeah,
Is that the
which-
one you're talking about?
Yeah, which they do they upgrade it to mono touch
Oh,
and
that's
all that
nice.
other stuff you can do in the cloud.
That's
I
very
tried
nice.
that
Yeah.
because they have a free and it was slow no matter how I configured.
So I'm going to go ahead and keep
So-
going here. We're going to create a new file.
Shut up.
We're going to
This is
select.
recorded.
We're going to select user interface.
Oh,
We'll select user interface. And we're going to select empty. Everybody following along okay?
New file.
We're going to go ahead and select next. I can decide my device family. If you were going to do iPhone and iPad, you could actually drop these guys down and select whether or not it's for the iPad. We're going to stick with the iPhone specifically. Click next. It's going to ask me for a name. This is going to be a tweet, item, cell. At least for my purposes. If you're following along and wish to call it something else and create more trouble for yourself in following along, feel free to call it something else. We're going to go ahead and do a create. We now have our tweet item cell XIB file, or nib file, I believe is they're called.
Oh, that's in the supported file.
And right now we have nothing because this is an empty nib file. It doesn't have anything in it. We don't have any UI elements, nothing. But we're going to go ahead and add. Press it. We're going to go ahead and add the table view cell. We're going to drop this guy onto there. Now we have created our table view cell, or at least added it to our nib file. We're going to click the size inspector. We're going to set its height to be 75, because remember on the table view cell earlier, we set the row height to 75. So we're going to do that here so we get some extra space. Now we're going to add some elements to this cell. So first thing we're going to add is an image view, because hey, we want to see the image view, right? We see the user's image. I'm going to go ahead and add a label for the name. And as you can see, it's lining up things nicely for you. So this is how they help make all iPhone apps, look very similar, because everything has bars that you can drag things to, so it keeps everything nice and conformed. Conform to the Apple way, or the ghost of Jobs will haunt you for all eternity.
I almost forgot he was dead, so you reminded me. Thanks a lot.
Stinks to bring that memory, huh? We're going to go ahead and set this guy to bold, so he's all nice and bold. And we're going to lower his font size to 11, so it's not really huge.
Ours goes to 11, huh? Okay.
Then we're going to add another label. I'm going to expand this guy to take up the rest of the space. I'm going to make this guy have no lines, so it basically will do double. It will add lines as necessary. Otherwise, it'll try to fix it all in one line or 2 lines or 3 lines or whatever. But if we set it to 0, it just handles it like you would expect. And we're going to set this guy to like 10. That didn't work out quite at all. Set this guy to 10. If we want to get real specific, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0.
Well, Twitter can only have 160.
140.
140, whatever.
So,
So.
if I have 10, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. It all fits.
Nice.
So, really nice, cheesy way to make sure it all going to work. But hey, you know what? Gets the job done, right? Okay, so now we're going to get into something a little odd. We need to have a way to reach each of these elements inside of that row or cell for row at index path. That method that we just stubbed out. We need a way to access this view, image view, and the 2 labels, right? Well, the way you do that, which I really hate this, I wish they'd come up with a better way, is you see this tag field right here? This is how you do it. And it only takes an integer.
Awesome.
No, wait, can't you,
Wait, what?
why can't you go and do like we were talking about earlier, control drag it and create a variable inside of the view controller?
If I had created a view controller for this view, we could do that. But I didn't do that. Because that's a little bit more overhead than I really need. So if we had actually gone through and created a view controller for the
For
cell,
this particular cell.
created outlets, then yes, we could have done that. And some examples online will tell you to do that. The way they actually show you in the book is this way.
Okay.
And this is the way I learned how to do it, so this is the way y'all are going to learn how to do it. Unfortunately, I apologize in advance. But to go ahead and do the view controller stuff is a little bit more overhead than we really need, because we only have a single cell. We're not doing anything overly complicated within this cell. We're basically just going to say, hey, you're supposed to be the image, you're supposed to be the name, and you're supposed to be the tweet. So we don't really have to do anything. So we're going to make the view, or the image view 1. We'll make the name 2. And what should, anybody want to guess what I'm going to make this one?
5?
Josh?
9.
Come on. Binary, man. Binary. 1, 2, and 4. Come on. That's why I specifically asked Josh, because he's always the one doing binary numbers.
I'm not paying attention, I'm sorry. I'm still trying to make my label.
So we've got 1, so we've got the image is 1, name is 2, tweet is 4. Alright? Again, I don't really prefer this way, I don't really like this way, but this is the quickest way from point A to point B for the time being. So now that we have our cell defined, we have it laid out, and we have our specific elements tagged, we can now go back to that method and finish building it out. And if y'all don't mind, I'm actually going to cheat a little because I've only got about 20 minutes and I want to get this done. And I want to show you 2 things in the meantime. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed one thing. Let me go back to that cell item view. By the way, if you're following along now, I'm going to start going a little faster, so I'm sorry in advance. If you want copies of my code, I'll finish it and put it out there on GitHub tomorrow so everybody can see the finished code. But on this table cell view, on the attributes inspector, there's this identifier, and they have in here they have reuse identifier. We can actually use this inside of inside that method to say, hey, we want the cell that has this reuse identifier. So we're going to call this tweet item cell identifier. Okay, and we're going to reuse this here in a second. Go over here. The way we do this is in a string char. Okay, so there's that guy. Then I say UI table. We're already doing the cell. Sorry. Alright, so this guy's going to be our table view, DQ, reusable cell with identifier. Since we named the identifier this guy, and then we assign that to a string, you can actually say cell identifier. We're calling a message, so that guy gets done. Okay, so then we need to check to make sure our cell actually has a value. So in this case, we'll do cell if our cell equals nil. We're going to go ahead and grab nib equals ns bundle. The bundle, if I remember correctly, I think the whole app itself is a bundle, if I remember correctly. That's how I believe it's described. Hopefully I'm not wrong, because I really don't want to give y'all misinformation, but I also want to explain what I'm doing at the same time. Load nib named. In our case, our nib is named tweet item cell.
Should we just pass in our identifier?
No,
Oh.
because this is not the identifier.
Oh, okay, never
This
mind.
is the actual name of nib.
So,
From the bundle and the main bundle, load a nib named tweet item cell, which is what we named the file. And this has a deal because I don't have the string. Because right here, our tweet item cell, that's what our nib file name is, so it's looking for that specifically. So load that.
Is that last line, that's gonna happen the first time when we have no cells created?
Right, if we have no cells created, that'll happen the first time.
Okay, and then after that, it's gonna get reused?
Yes, and then we'll say cell equals nim object at index 0.
To be completely clear, it's not gonna get reused on every cell, it's when
When we
you're scrolling up, this one scrolls off, then it will allow you to
Reuse,
reuse
okay.
that one for the next one below it.
So
Gotcha.
it's not actually loading, new ones.
So we're
it's
not
just
gonna have 5,000
Yes.
stacks?
You have how many fit on the screen,
Plus one.
plus maybe one.
Yeah, okay, that
And in this
works.
case, we're gonna just, hey, if we can't for some reason load it, we're gonna say nslog failed to load tweet item cell on nim. That guy did that. So that handles us getting a cell and making sure we've got something that we can work with. So then we want to
Set
Well-
of tags.
know, well, before that we need to know what row we're on. We need to know what row we're on. So row, equals index path row, and we say we're going to need to add our tweet item, and we're going to need to import our tweet item so that we know about it. I didn't add it earlier because I wanted to do it only when we need it, right? No need loading stuff we don't need.
I totally missed all the tests, man. What happened to all the tests?
But there's no tests on here, sorry.
You
Actually,
guys-
I haven't actually played
all
with,
these years, you
I
guys
haven't,
been pounding me with the, where's the test?
yeah, I know. I haven't actually had it, I made a choice. I
I'm
can learn
I'm
Objective-C
totally messing with you, dude.
or do the thing, I
Let
want
go.
to do test, that has to come
I think
second.
it's probably gonna some testing problems that aren't total pain.
They actually have one built in now. I
I
haven't,
have the stuff built in, but from everything I understand, it's a pain in the rear. But there's some new ones or something. Kevin and Ben were talking about some.
Is there anything else
That
of
don't
value in
totally
the
suck.
index path?
not that I'm aware of. Again, I'm not the expert here, I'm just trying to give y'all an idea what you're looking at. So we got our row back from the index path, so we know what row we're on. We grab that specific tweet out of our array. Now we're going to go ahead and mess with our our individual view elements. So in this case, we're going to do a UI label. This will be the name label. And then we'll do UI label. This guy will be cell view with tag. And remember, we set those tags earlier, so we know the name is 2. The proper way to do this, the way they show you in the book, is you actually do some C defines, and so you have some basic constants up at the top and that stuff. So we're not going to. I would have gone back and added this, but right now I want to get done. So then we set our name label. Oh, there we go. That's awesome. Better go ahead and do this because we're going to need it in a second. US in this case.
126, J37.
Okay. Name label dot text equals tweet dot username. So what we did was we grabbed the actual label because we grabbed the view with the tag that was for that label. Then we set that label's text to our username. We're going to do the same thing with the tweet label. View with tag. And our tweet was 4, so we're going to set that guy there. That. Tweet label dot text equals tweet dot. I'm pretty sure that's that. Okay, and then we're going to do our, because we need an image to go into the image view, so this time we're going to do our avatar image equals, give me a second, UI image, image with data. Basically what we're going to do is tell the image to fill with the data from a URL, because that's, it's basically a web data. Data. Contents of a URL. And we would do ns URL, URL, the string. This becomes tweet dot image URL. There we go. So that gets the data from the URL, sticks it into our UI image object. And then we're going to grab the UI image view. View. I'm going to say this guy's going to be UI image view. Cell. View with tag. That guy was 1. Very good. Somebody was paying attention. And then we'll do avatar image view dot image equals avatar image. Okay. That should be everything. So in theory, I should be able to run this, do a search, and have it bring back some data. So who wants? First off, we can go ahead and attempt to build it.
Now,
Do
we
hook up the search button?
received the UI image view, UI label, etc. as a pointer by calling view with tag. That's automatically being reference counted for us then, so we don't have to
Yeah, we don't
create
have
those pointers.
we don't have to free up any of that. It's all done with Arc. So I built with no issue. So we're going to go ahead and run. We only got 15 minutes. I want to show you this. Change this part to change this one section to GCD, and then be good to go. There we go. Does that work? You notice that didn't get rid of the keyboard? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and stop this guy real quick.
That's a lot quicker than you were,
That's what I keep hearing. Yeah.
Because it's only sitting
Okay. So now the keyboard will go away when we get rid of it. So I'm going to run it again real quick. It won't take as long because now it's there. HOU, open dev, run the search. There you go. Now, we only have a few deals there, so let's do something else. iOS 5. You notice how that took a second? Now also watch. Notice how it kind of stalls as we move because it's creating those new cells as we go, loading the image. And it's loading the image from the URL each time it creates that cell. So that's actually blocking my main UI thread. Okay, so you can, just to reiterate, see, that's some nasty blockage, okay? Now, we're going to come back in here, and we're going to change this guy right here to use GCD for threading, okay? So, let's do this. I'm never saying that again. Dispatch, async, and we're going to do dispatch, get global queue, and they have some nice little I guess these would be the equivalent of enums. I forget what they're actually called. They might be called enums. Let's see, I don't remember. But we want the default priority queue. I don't remember what this guy was for, but pass 0. That's every example you see for GCD will tell you to pass 0 there, actually. At least that I have seen.
future expansion.
And then we'll close that guy off. Okay. Now, we're going to run this guy. We're going to run this guy asynchronously. Let's get rid of this guy so the code goes back to a normal looking view. Okay, but now here's the thing. For iPhone, for UI, anytime you want to update the UI, you can't do it in a background thread. You have to do it on the main thread. It's kind of a rule. It's not kind of a rule, it is a rule. So we want to, now that we've got our image, we want to access that on the main thread to update the UI, right? So we have to actually do something special in here and say dispatch sync dispatch for get main queue, because that's the main queue, the main thread. And then we, once again, close that guy off. And we're going to drop this code. And there we go.
It's a potion. I'm sorry.
We just threaded our application to handle the UI. So I'm going to run this guy again. iOS 5. Run. Notice how much quicker that came up?
Mm-hmm.
And notice how it's all nice and smooth now.
Yeah, I can see it loading the images.
When it does a reuse.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's happening asynchronously.
All right.
Ta-da! We built a Twitter app, and I've got 10 minutes to spare. Yes! Okay.
Okay, now leave that code up real fast so I can catch up.
Get on GitHub tomorrow.
Oh.
Now, I'll check it into GitHub since I'm already connected in.
So we built a Twitter app. We built a Twitter search app. Sorry if the code was bad. Use your standard, good coding practices when you write your own apps. But hopefully you got an understanding of what it takes to build an iPhone app. And I hope you got to see some cool stuff like with the GCD and the threading. Because when I first saw that and did it, I was like, are you kidding? It's that easy? And I swore I was doing it wrong. Went and looked at like 100 YouTube videos and was like, okay, everybody else is doing it the same way. I must be doing it right. So, yay for us. Please go and rate this talk. Tell me I sucked. Tell me I didn't suck. Just kind of let me know, because I want to improve my talks and be better at them. I'm going to give you all a second to write that down if anybody wants to write it down. If you don't want to write it down, you can find it on my CodeMap profile, which is here. 2 slides, JB. I gave you 2 slides.
That's right.
And that's all.
I can get the URL shortener for you.
Good. Good
It's
stuff.
on there. We can definitely.
Specifically for the talks, that would be nice. The profile one isn't that big a deal.
The profile one is simple enough.
Yeah.
All
So
the good ASCII characters are taken though, because I was like, it'd be cool if it'd be like at encoding. No, that's Twitter. The pound. No, that's already taken.
it's all right. It's all good. So before I get to the giving out of the books, any questions, comments, concerns? You sucks.
Can you show the slide with the resource links again?
Again,
Get the
these are on the slides are on my CodeMap profile.
Okay.
Isn't
Very
that nice how
nice,
that
very
works out
nice.
for you?
Well,
But I will.
I'll
Yes,
look
but
it up,
I
but
can't take you
right
back to the
here.
resources link. So.
and I'm lazy.
What do we need you for? We just go to CodeMap and
So that's